I'm used to it. It's not the spray because yeah, resolution, yeah. So it used to be spray. So you put it in and now before I was a beta tester, so I used the solution. It's phenomenal. It's I love it. I'm a huge fan. I can't tell you. Oh my gosh, it's the last day, right? I mean, 7 days for sure. Oh yeah, it's insane. Yeah. Well, I think I choose like the Fusion or whatever it's called. But like now, I don't have any solutions. I'm like, after 3, is this thing working right anymore? Like, I feel like now I have no confidence in my rate. Right. I mean, what you create. It's funny because when we first started vision, like, there's no way to start. You've been in doing something. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't really sure something. So this is going to be a pretty different PitchBreakfast because we are trying this in a hybrid fashion. We're going to have some attendees and our panelists here in the room, and we're going to have the presenters actually presenting virtually online. So a few things before we get started that we want to make sure that everybody understands. One, please keep your mic and camera off. And the reason for that is we need to be able to see the presenters, and this video system is going to focus on whoever is talking. That includes people who are on Zoom. You can keep your microphone and cameras off unless you're actively presenting. And also to people here in this room, if you do talk, the camera will switch over and focus on you. So just be aware of any noise gets picked up. That's where the camera's going to point. If you have any questions for the companies that are presenting, please send those via chat. We will try to get to those questions if we can during the presentations. However, you also have an opportunity to talk with the companies that are presenting after the presentations are over via our virtual networking. So that's going to happen in breakout rooms on Zoom after the event, after the presentations have happened. So with that, we also want to give one reminder. We are asking everybody here to please wear a mask unless you're actively drinking or if you are in the middle of the room, far away from everyone else talking. And for the panelists, you guys will be interested. So with that, we want to welcome everybody to. All right. You quit that. All right. Hold on one second. We're going to welcome everyone to Pitch Breakfast, the event where panelists. There you go. Welcome everyone to Pitch Breakfast, the event where entrepreneurs pitch and panelists enrich. These events are made possible by a slew of companies here that support the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we want to give a big thank you to all of those companies here before we get started. First, we want to give a big thanks to our host,
We can't hear you guys there in Charlotte.
All right, can you hear us now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. Like I said, new software, new technology here, and a new setup. So we're trying to work the kinks out. But we want to give a big thanks to Ecos for letting us test that out. We also want to give a big shout out to everybody who's watching via the watch parties. We've got watch parties at Flywheel in the Cabarrus Center and also at Flywheel in Winston-Salem. And we have a watch party going on at TechWorks of Gaston County. So a big shout out to everybody who's joining us virtually from those locations. So first, we want to give a big thanks to Spengler Agins Bradley. They have been attorneys for the Charlotte startup community and have been with us really since the very beginning of Pitch Breakfast. They work with entrepreneurs and local businesses on everything from getting formation, getting your company started, all the way through to early stage and mid stage funding. Excellent people to ask any legal questions that you might have as a founder. We also want to give a big thanks to NK Patent Law. NK Patent Law specialize in intellectual property, patents, trademarks, anything that has to do with IP, and they're fantastic partners for Pitch Breakfast and really the entrepreneurial community to any founder that has questions about intellectual property. We also want to give a big shout out to and also remind everyone to please mute your microphones. Turn off your cameras, mute your microphones, because that's what will get picked up. We want to give a big shout out to Dual Boot Partners. They work All right, should be unmuted now. Sorry about that. Yes, we want to give a big shout out to Dual Boot Partners. They work with a lot of founders here in town on their technology and really are expert networkers. So if you are new to the community or you want to get some connections outside of just technology, you can still sit down with somebody from the Dual Boot Partners team, and they're always great at getting you really connected here in the ecosystem. All right. Powerfully Butchnick, there are CPAs and CPAs to a lot of small businesses and startups here in the community. Great people to talk to about accounting, tax, advisory services, and really everything. So have been fantastic to work with. And then we want to welcome two new partners to the Pitch Breakfast community. The first is Insperity. So Insperity helps entrepreneurs of all sizes, small businesses, just getting started all the way through to established with HR solutions that really fit their business, helps them save time, and helps them really serve their customers in a very personal way. And lastly, we have Catapult. Catapult standardizes and automates the request for proposal workflow. And they're doing this in a lot of different industries and are really blowing up and are actively hiring. So if you want to learn more about Catapult, you can visit them at catapulthq.com. All right, with that, we do want to give one quick legal disclaimer. Pitch Breakfast is an event that is educational in nature. The companies that are pitching are practicing and not conducting a securities offering. So what that means is that none of the companies here that are pitching intend for this to be a general solicitation. If they're giving an ask of, $500,000, they're not actually pitching you, they're simply practicing their pitch here for the purpose of education and feedback. So today's format is going to be a little bit different than our usual format. Each company has 6 minutes to share their presentation with slides, and then we'll have 7 minutes of feedback and Q&A with our panelists. So each company, 4 companies, 6 minutes to pitch, 7 minutes of Q&A and feedback. And our panelists today include Daniel Friel, who's an innovator, board advisor, founder, chief strategy officer of Nokia DX, and you know that right? Close enough. It's long. It's wait. Yes. And Rob Cummings, who's managing director and CTO of Falferius Capital Partners, among many other things. So welcome, guys. All right, with that, we're going to give this a go. We've got 4 great companies here with the cohort 15 of the RevTech Labs Accelerator. We're very excited to see what the cohort 15 is up to. And so this month and next month, you'll be hearing from companies that are in this cohort that are focusing on fintech and fintech for this particular accelerator program. So we're excited to welcome today the companies HomeTrack, Dandelion, Hire and Fire Your Kids, and TrueLitives. We want to give a big virtual welcome to the team from HomeTrack as they go ahead and share screen and get started with their presentation. I have to stop the share screen on my own. All right, Brendan.
Yep. And I'm going to be the one talking here. So good morning, everybody. Glad to be with you virtually. I am Brett O'Daniel. I'm co-founder of HomeTrack. And HomeTrack is solving big problems for both home buyers and lenders. First, we address the pain points of the consumer, and then we show you how it comes together for our lender partners. So if you or a family member are looking to buy a home, you know firsthand that the real estate experience is outdated and it's socially irresponsible. 74% of consumers find the home that they end up buying on their own, but they still have to call an agent to tour them. Or worse, they use real estate websites and they get bombarded with calls and texts and emails. HomeTrack is the socially responsible solution. In the same way you use Uber to quickly find a driver to get a ride, you use HomeTrack to quickly find a real estate buyer's agent to show you any home that's for sale. You also are delivered down payment assistance options for that home. You pick the home, the day and the time that you want to see the home, and a real estate agent confirms that appointment within minutes. Consumers can now schedule a showing and receive confirmation within 3 to 5 minutes, which is often faster than getting an Uber driver. So once a consumer identifies a specific home, they see down payment assistance options and they may choose to get qualified through the digital mortgage. While down payment is one of the largest obstacles in purchasing a home, 70% of consumers are still unaware of available funds for those homes. And believe it or not, consumers are still exposed to fair lending and redlining violations. This platform eliminates unintentional and intentional prejudice, as many agents discourage communities and they don't treat everyone equally. A request notification is pinged out to the network agents based on their availability and their location, and that's signified by the blue dots there on the screen. This consumer chooses the date and the time that they want to tour the home, and they decide if an alternative time is convenient. The consumer and the agent can communicate through the chat feature, but we do not share the consumer's contact information. It's very important. We have talked about the consumer pain points now, but what we're really doing is solving a mortgage problem with a real estate technology. Banks lose 93% of the mortgage opportunities from their own customer base every year. And we have created a silver bullet for those lenders of how to capture mortgages before those customers are referred away by real estate agents. And we've actually created a second silver bullet for realtors. They love our platform because there's no upfront cost to meet new home shoppers. HomeTrack's primary go-to market strategy is through our lender partners. It's a no-brainer when banks give consumers HomeTrack to promote home ownership in all communities and deliver hot leads to the local real estate agents instead of chasing them for loans like they historically do. Banks generate $6 million in revenue for every 100,000 customers that HomeTrack is marketed to. Lenders distribute HomeTrack through a co-branded experience to their consumers. So lenders now are notified that their customers are shopping for homes and they can instantly deliver that mortgage pre-approval. HomeTrack receives an industry standard 25% referral fee on every buy-side transaction. So for every 100,000 customers that our lender partners market to, 1.35 million in revenue is generated for HomeTrack. You want to flip the screen real quick, Brennan? We make money when our lender partners give their millennial customers a smooth home buying experience, and we help them overcome that down payment obstacle. So HomeTrack is consumer-centric, and no one else in our competitive landscape really is tackling it the way we are. We are the only platform that gives lenders that intel that their customers are physically touring homes. And then promoting that down payment assistance is a big deal for our lender CRA, and it's a huge differentiator for us. So HomeTrack is live, we're active, we're generating revenue. We've secured dozens of distribution partners. Most of the national real estate brokerages and hundreds of real estate agents are already in our network. We recently added 8 new partners, and we're now marketing to over 100,000 of their customers. Our financial projections include our early traction of 1%, and that doubles an average bank's production over a 6 to 12 month time period. That customer base can come from one large bank or several banks in a market. We simply expand to a new market following our lender's footprint, which extremely minimizes our barrier to entry. So our team, my co-founder, Mark Gorman, and I, we have over 50 years in mortgage combined, over 50 years of mortgage banking and real estate experience. So we know firsthand how HomeTrack fixes these distinct pain points across these channels. So we're currently integrating home showings on demand through a national partnership, and we plan to exit in 3 to 5 years. When banks deliver HomeTrack to their customers in all the markets, it's extremely scalable. The total addressable real estate market is $2.1 trillion a year, and this generates large scale revenue for HomeTrack. And then the social impact of HomeTrack, and I mentioned it a little bit, it focuses on the low to moderate income areas, minorities, and then specifically serves disinvested neighborhoods. So through our partnerships with community development organizations and HUD-approved housing counselors, we help provide access to housing while also leveraging the local lending community. So our main ask is for introductions to decision makers in banking, credit union, and mortgage industries to distribute HomeTrack. So I thank you for your time to learn more about the socially responsible real estate solution. And we ask you to help us make a difference in thousands of lives by providing easier access to housing. Thank you.
Great kickoff on time. I love it.
Oh,
we will
good,
now
good.
hand it over to our panelists.
Good morning, Brett.
Good morning.
Good presentation. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think the industry that you're serving is in for a complete overhaul. We're seeing the whole cash buyer phenomenon coming in and being able to fund that. So you're entering a marketplace that's in somewhat disarray, and you're definitely going to have to pinpoint the specific pain that you're solving. And so from your presentation, I think I hear, you're connecting to lenders, but I think there's also I'll call it a buyer agent lead generation. What would you say your number one pain point is that you're solving for?
The number one pain point is it's kind of dual, but our focus and delivery is through the lender channel. So the helping the banks get to more customers before they're referred away. Traditionally, they're referred away by the local real estate agent. So that's our delivery model, and that's a huge pain point for banks and credit unions. But ultimately, the customer is the biggest winner because they get a transparent and a no obligation, no hassle home showing, and they're able to meet different agents as they tour different houses, and they don't have to commit to anyone. So it's really those two. I don't mean to disregard real estate agents because they're part of our solution, but that's the easiest part of our model.
Right, and the buyer agents, they don't have an expectation that they're going to sign on the client as an exclusive agent.
Correct.
So you can bounce around.
That's what they're hoping, but there's no obligation. Yeah.
So with the number one pain point being the lenders, I think really being specific on your differentiation, because it is a pretty crowded marketplace when you go back 20, 25 years with lending trade. If you had a slide that said, this is how we're different, and I don't want to pinpoint lending tree, but other lender lead type of portfolios, I think that would be helpful. Don't get me wrong, I think your slides are well done.
Good, no, that's great.
But it's just a crowded marketplace, and so really specifically differentiating. The other thing is that you're setting up a market, I think a three-way marketplace, right?
Yes.
So the lenders, the clients, the buyer agents. And so from experience with marketplaces, you just need to make sure that you have demand on all three of those points.
Yes.
Because if you're overweighted in one, it can be a challenge to work with. Other than that, think about as far as extending your platform, the cash offer, I think that is really hot right now. And since you're connecting lenders already, in natural extension, I think this platform would be able to, for your clients, the buyers here to walk in with essentially a cash offer. I think that's a pretty compelling market these days. So just something to think about as you extend.
Sure, no, I really, really appreciate it. All good feedback.
And last question, have you generated revenue yet? Do you have traction?
Yeah, no, we have, yeah. So we started in the Midwest, and we're now expanding to Texas and the East Coast, yes.
Okay, great. Dan.
So Brendan, a great job fitting in the 6 minutes. So you set a good hurdle for everybody to meet the 6 minute target. I know that's really hard to do because I'm sure you had a lot more you could have told us.
Absolutely.
I'll do the disclosure. I did 20 years at a little bank down the street here, and as Rob said, we went through a lot of this. Hey, let's transform the home value experience. 25, 30 years ago, lending trees here at the banks here. We actually drove something called Loans.com that we did that was basically a bank-friendly version, a more bank-friendly version, if you will, of lending tree. And I think to your point, you did your competitive landscape where you laid that out. I would have liked to have seen that a little bit earlier to kind of focus, because as Rob said, there's a lot of places where you could play in this market, right? From the lending tree lead gen model to the Zillow, which is kind of a more complete thing, and kind of where did you fit? So again, I know you had a lot. I've got to say this because Rob's heard this probably about 100 times now, but more on the team, right? Because if you're doing this, especially as an investor pitch, the investors are going to make the decision based on the team. And I know 6 minutes hard, but you did a very, very short version of what the team, and it looks like it was a really good team, but honestly didn't have enough time to digest much of that. So I really like when you build the team story into why you guys started. That's why you're passionate. And I have to say there was a lot early on, and I was trying to get laser focused on where you were, but you kind of, by the time you were off one thing and you were on to the next, social responsibility, and I get the redlining and the whole kind of bad history with that and how you might fix that. Then you went into, we help with down payment, and I have to admit you completely lost me on how you help on the down payment side. And I guess that's because of the relationships you would have with the banks, but I wasn't sure because we didn't really get into the detail there. And then as Rob said, the fact that you've actually, if this is a three-way marketplace, right? They're hard. I've done many of them in the last 30 years. They're really hard because you got to get all three players going, right? And in this case, you got to get banks going. That's an art form in and of itself. You got to get customer acquisition, right, on the buyers, and then you've got to actually do this in a way where you're not going to piss off the realtors. And that's a really big thing. I will tell you, when I was at Bank of America, we actually started, we were going to put a real estate office in every single bank branch. We did that whole thing. We went to Congress, we testified, we got rules changed at a federal level. And then the realtor market came back to us and went to our CFO and said, hey, if you actually do this, we're going to pull all the realtor money out of the bank throughout the country. So the realtor market, you got to make sure, and this is where it's hard, you got to do this in a realtor-friendly model, or you're going to get a lot of industry resistance.
All good feedback, and I'll just everything you said. Yeah, I know the 6 minutes we do our best. The real estate agent part of it, they get the 25% referral, and we actually pay them for each home tour. They love it. Yeah, I mean, are there occasionally ones that don't like being referred to as an Uber driver? Yes, but for every one of those, there's 3 or 4 that love it. So I mean, your point is well taken. That is the easier side of our 3-sided marketplace. We definitely have been able to identify that.
And so your analogy, the Uber for real estate, will resonate with investors, but you're absolutely right. Don't use that with the real estate community.
Right. Well, the funny part is some of the agents actually are Uber drivers. That's an interesting angle on the whole thing.
Nice presentation, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback. Anybody else? Yeah, thanks.
All right, so up next, we're going to have Dandelion go ahead and share their screen and get ready for their presentation.
Looks great.
Morning, guys. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present to you this morning. So it's always a little bit airy-fairy when we follow some of our cohort partners because they are in market, they're actively generating revenue, and we are just formed this year and we're just launching right now with a simple premise. We believe that financial inclusion is a function of inability to access available payments rails. We think that people want to pay around the world, and when we take a look at the global population of about 1/3, and including in the US, there are 20 million people who are unbanked. We think part of the problem is in fact a demand side issue. They don't have access to reasonably cheap rails. One of the key things that we're trying to provide is, in fact, somebody mentioned the 3-sided marketplace. It is a challenge to enter the rails system because you've got banks, you've got merchants, and you've got end users. We started with a simple concept that we could provide to end users a very simple interface, but in our belief, in this particular kind of 3-sided market, we know we need to partner with the financial institutions to get access to their rails systems or be a partner with them on managing their account ledgers. But we also need to make sure we get in front of the merchants. And our primary goal is reduce the cost, increase the speed, and give higher reliability and security, particularly to merchants, but give also all of the proper reporting requirements to the banks. In Rails systems, before we get into the tech, I just want to recap. The key areas that people have found frustrating is that with regards to the older models, the Visa, MasterCard, they don't actually offer real-time settlement and finalization. They do a process called netting, which takes about a day on average. They also have very few customer interfaces. And people are now talking about decentralized finance in very broad terms, and they're looking at blockchain, particularly Ethereum. And that has a number of layer 2, layer 3 solutions, but it also has a primary computing problem, and that's the problem of serialization, from which all of its lagging and its price volatility and cost, that has exploded. And I think that is the primary cause for concern when people think about one major thing every Rails system needs, and that's scalability. You have to be able to scale a network exponentially, but at the same time, try to figure out a way that the costs don't grow exponentially. And for that reason, we came up with the notion of a directed acyclic graph. It's not new. This is an old model for computing logic, but what hasn't been done is a way to put it into a transaction layer. We think we can become the new base transacting layer for all of the payments rail systems. And that includes not just merchant payments and direct payments, international remittances, but we also think that based on the simplicity of the logic, we will have an opportunity at some time to be able to manage particularly OTC exchanges. Those are exchanges wherein the banks will provide direct clients all sorts of derivatives. That's the primary growth market long term. But to get there, we need to have a little bit of verity about the product. What makes us different? There are two primary attributes. One is the parallelization of our system. As I mentioned, all blockchain solutions go through a centralized mining point for their finalization. That's the whole suite, the clearing, the settling, the finalization. And they all get to these funnel points. So effectively, blockchain as well as Visa, MasterCard, their existing rail systems, these all operate on a similar batch processing. And if you can kind of imagine, what we're trying to do is rather than having batch processing of payments and transactions, we're trying to make that a continuous flow process between whatever parties to a transaction exist. In other words, right now, I can transact with you, and that gets put into an order flow. We believe that it's possible for me to transact with you, and we arrange the full settlement using the consensus and reliability of the network in a way that we don't have to get into someone else's order flow. This has some challenges. Right now, we're arraying the team and have had a great deal of key technical support, particularly from the Fields Institute for the Advanced Research of Mathematics. There's a few reasons we've had to partner with them. We're also one of the first grantees in their program. We've also partnered with the Cybersecurity Research Labs, headed by one of our key technical advisors, Atefa Mashetan, who is probably the leading cryptologist in Canada. We are Toronto-based. Our goal is to be in the US shortly, particularly on the enterprise front. We have another tactic that we are looking at on the international remittances, and we are looking for partners there as well. And in terms of the actual infrastructure, right now we are just building and completing the network build on what we call the simple logic layer. That's effectively an A for B transaction. Very simple, no complications, peer-to-peer. Where we're going next, though, and why we've gotten a lot of supercomputer and parallel computing expertise is because we want to build a smart contracts compiler, which will enable all of the parallelization that I've discussed with you. We should be able to manage OTC contracts. We should be able to manage global networks for payments and international remittances to scales that Visa and MasterCard can't get to because of the way that they've cobbled together their legacy systems. That's our primary goal. And how we get there? First, we're going to be partnering with the enterprise. We need to make sure that we can get some demonstrations going with regional banks. We want to partner with them to provide their merchants a no device, lowest cost, and highest security payments rail system. No more 3% to Visa and MasterCard. We think we can charge a fraction of that. We'd like to be able to split that with the merchants. The reason that if we can make it available and cheap for merchants, we think that we can drive the adoption at that point, the point of sale. And that's our current goal. So with that, thank you very much. Please see our white paper there. It's got a great deal of the information that I've presented to you today, but in further technical detail. It's also the core piece for our provisional filing. And that's where we're at.
I'll go first here. And Alex, great job again, fitting a ton in a very short period of time. It's not an easy thing to do, so thank you for that. A couple of things. I actually have some background in the payment space and actually did a retail payment system spin out of CheckFree that we turned into a payment startup. So I think one of the things that would have helped me if you said what is the problem with the current payment system, right? The current rails, because you're saying I'm going to build a new rail, which by the way is a challenge as you're well aware. But start out with the problem with the current rail system that we do is when consumers are paying for transactions, you're paying 3% or you're paying, 25, in some cases over 50 cents per transaction, right, to process the payment. And we all know when you get down to the core of what it really costs to process a transaction, the real cost of doing that is pennies, right? It's less than 2 cents. And there's the problem, right? We got a big disconnect. So I would, I think you need to lay that out a little bit more succinctly around, here's the problem with the current rail system. And it's been a problem, honestly, for 50 years, right? A lot of people have tried to solve it. And one of the things that I think you need to get into here a little bit is why are there are a lot of solutions out there. You talked about, about blockchain and a lot of different blockchain and smart blockchain contracts and problems with that. But where did you fit in that whole landscape, and why is your solution going to be the one that actually you get folks to adopt, right? The other point here, you're going after Visa, MasterCard, the big payment networks, and that's how in the world are you going to do that? And you kind of let us in at the end a little bit that you're going to focus on regional banks and doing that. And by the way, I think that's not a bad strategy. But how do you get them there, right? And but again, that fundamental problem of we pay too much for transactions, we've got a solution here that can solve that and do it in a way that scales. Because you're dead right, I won't identify which one, but I was on with somebody that processes probably about a quarter of the total transactions in the US, and we were trying to connect into their legacy system. And honestly, it was 50 years old and trying to actually connect it. They had this open API system that they were purporting. Let's just say it's not quite as open as they advertised. I'm going to come back to team again, because I always do. You have what looked like a phenomenal team. Put that earlier in the presentation, spend a little more time, and I know none of us like talking about ourselves, but talk a little bit more about your role, right? How you got there, why this is something that's passionate for you, and I think that would have been helpful. But again, great job. I also avoid, you put something up there that I'm still kind of working through. Transaction linked directed I can't even pronounce the word you use, graph, and I have absolutely zero idea what that is. But that was on one of your slides. So if you're going to put something like that up there for people that aren't as smart as you like me, you got to explain stuff like that to us. But great job on the presentation.
Those are all great points. It's weaning ourselves off techno jargon is an ongoing process amongst the team.
Alex, so let's start there. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to also add, those are two really good points. Definitely, yeah, the problem most of the times that we get this presentation available to people in fintech, they understand a little bit of the intuition around the cost of and the magnitude of the challenge and the existing rail systems. But you're absolutely right, because I think especially at these earlier stages, we've got to make sure for investors who are a little bit more maybe leaning towards the idea and concept, I'll put that problem up front and give a little bit better map. I think that's a really interesting graphic that's kind of evolving in the head right now as to how we fit vis-a-vis all of these other players and actors. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, so Alex, on the technical side of things, pretend you're pitching to someone that knows nothing about the industry. At least Daniel understands it. I probably know enough to be really dangerous, but don't understand it all that much. My personal experience with my startup many years ago, we were a technical sale also. And what I would find is when we pitched, I would look at some people in the audience and they'd be glazing over because we're using jargon that people didn't necessarily understand. So as you start to broaden your pitch, dumb it down a little bit. Try to eliminate the acronyms. The other two areas that we learned that resonated with our audience was, number one, use cases. So, hey, this is what the challenge customer X had. This is how we solved that problem, specifically with the use of Dandelion, for example. And the other is a demo. Now, it was interesting. You had, as you started your pitch, you had kind of the demo of sending an international payment, which was a pretty simple example. But again, I think what you're providing is the underlying infrastructure. So not sure you can necessarily demo that, but I guess my point being is if the more you can dumb it down for people that don't understand it at all. I actually went back to my kids and said, let me pitch to my wife and kids that know nothing about my industry. Can they at least kind of get what we were pitching? So keep that in mind. The other thing is that, and people have heard this from me before, I have kind of 8 things that I look for in a pitch. There was a few things that I think were missing in your pitch, and that was, how do you make money? I think I can guess that it's probably taking a cut of the fees, but the competition, where you're different, and just overall traction. You said up front that you're just a year into this, but everybody has some level of traction. Do you have the network built yet? If you can talk more about that, just those 3 things I think would help with your pitch. So I'll stop there. Any thoughts on that feedback?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right on the traction. So we did just form in February this year, and it's been more of a technical mission, which is a problem that I've kind of recognized both with the team as well as in our recent advisory board meeting, because I need to start, now that we've got a tech roadmap that's in place, I need to start thinking about what that product roadmap looks like. We're going to have that international remittances layer ready to go, but we're going to be running headlong into AML things in very short order. So right now I'm trying to get the team to say, all right, I'm going to just kind of lock you guys a little bit in your silo right now because your roadmap is good and you're executing wonderfully. I need to start and assemble a board with commerciality in mind and top of mind. That's going to be one of the primary drivers for the next, I think, 4 to 6 months for me. To get that kicked off, we are in conversations right now with Royal Bank of Canada, RBC. They're the largest player, at least on our side. We haven't gotten to the full scoping, so it's an ongoing discussion as to where exactly we can fit, and it will continue to be a bit of a challenge, which is why I'm trying to cultivate as many as I can, both in the Charlotte area specifically, and we have a couple of key contacts in Southeast Asia that we're looking at as well, because they also understand the problem, particularly in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, where they have very high unbanked populations, but they have an incredibly high smartphone coverage, which is one of the most strange disconnects. So we're certainly in those conversations as well. But again, until there's a paid pilot kind of in hand, I'm hesitant to say that we have much traction yet. But I have to figure out how I'm going to sell that and kind of negative it.
Hey, Alex, one thing, I happen to have a partner up in Toronto, and he ran global tech and ops for RBC, so I will connect you later today.
That would be awesome. That would be amazing. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so up next we have Jody Swain with the Hire and Fire Your Kids, which sounds very interesting.
Yes, very interesting. And it
So
looks great.
Jody, so we can see your slides, so whenever
That's
you're ready to start.
Okay, morning everybody. My name is Jody Swain and I am the founder of Hire and Fire Your Kids, the world's first gamified parenting app. I think more so than ever these days, parents are feeling ever stressed and frustrated with their kids' screen time, behaviors, and lack of help around the house. And whether we like it or not, kids prefer to communicate with this versus this. Parents are truly overwhelmed and are looking for help with friction-free communication, managing their house rules, and helping kids really understand the differences between needs and wants. So what's available today that can help? Well, I think for me, like a lot of families, you raise your kids how we were raised. We rely on friends and family to help us on our parenting journey. And when we realize we may need a little more help along the way, we can turn to books, podcasts, or the multitude of articles that are out there. And lastly, you can look for some professional help and hire a therapist, a coach, or a parenting course. But we are in the digital age, and there's a ton of apps out there. But the apps you'll find that are available are catered towards helping families with younger children. And if you're actually to Google parenting apps, you'll find there's no such thing. There's no tool to help you raise your kids in the digital age until now. Hire and Fire Your Kids is a customizable game that allows parents to manage the behaviors and chores in their home using a system of recognition, reward, and consequence. And we do this digitally through gameplay. And so we're finding the game is actually reducing friction in the home as it's helping parents parents really prepare their children and teens with household responsibilities, money management, and life skills for a successful future. So you essentially get to hire your kids for jobs around the house and can fire them if they're caught one too many times not following that family value or expectation. And the app is used daily in the home to empower kids and really help parents raise great financially savvy kids who will have the skills they'll need to take on the world. So we have over 12,000 registered users and received a number of testimonials. Here's just 3 of our families who enjoy the no assigning, no nagging, and the accountability we provide to keep them on track. We've had a number of recommendations from psychologists, social workers, and behavioral therapists. Most recently, we've been added as a resource by Autism Speaks Canada and the Boys and Girls Club. Our market, well, Gen Z is an emerging demographic with unprecedented marketing potential. And inside is a sub-market of teens and tweens who actually influence billions of dollars of their family spending. So our plan is to target parents of this group, more specifically moms, and we'll work with micro-influencers found on Facebook and Instagram to join us as ambassadors to promote the brand, as well as the Hire and Fire Your Kids community. We also plan to use App Store optimization and advertise on apps with similar target markets such as MyFitnessPal, Noom, Candy Crush, Flow Yoga, and more. And lastly, hire a PR team to drive the brand awareness and customer acquisition using all media channels. So Hire and Fire Kids is really, as I said, the only sort of true parenting app out there. And what sets us apart, I think, is that we're helping parents do the one thing that parents really want for their children, which is to help them be the best selves they can be. Hire and Fire Kids is a trademark name that captures attention, and keeping parents accountable is a top priority for us. So we encourage in the app parents to remind them to recognize their kids, stick to their family meetings, reward their kids on time, and ensure they're playing daily to see the positive behavioral changes in their home. We are the only app that has kids applying for jobs, so there's no assigning or telling our kids what to do. We really want to empower the children and put a high focus on the kids taking initiative and self-motivation. But the secret sauce really, I think, is the game itself of Hire and Fire with our superhero Warning X and our recognition check. And Hire and Fire really becomes the buffer between parent and child. And we cover things like hygiene, manners, family values, behaviors, expectations, money management, and more, all in one app. And yes, there's competition. You'll find a ton of chore apps out there and allowance apps, focusing on the financial literacy, but there is 0 gamified parenting apps to help you raise great financially savvy kids in this digital age. Our team, well, we are a small family-operated startup. I have over 20 years of consumer activities, primarily in sales, marketing, and operations. That's my husband, Ted. He has over 20 years in the financial services industry, primarily in product management, business development, and operation. That is my sister, Lisa, over 25 years working in software and tech. She manages all of our creative and marketing activities, including user experience. And lastly, Crewware, not a relative. They are development partners based out of India, and they've been with us every step of the way. So we partnered with the Blackhawk Network. They're a global leader in commerce solutions, and we just launched our Kids Cash program here in the US and Canada. So kids can now redeem their payday earnings towards gift cards of their choice right in the app, and we basically get paid a distribution fee for every card load. But our goal is to move into the fintech space as the world of money is changing, and we want to help parents and kids feel comfortable, confident, and capable in this space. And we can do this through offering our own Hire and Fire debit card, or do this by aligning with some strategic partners who are already doing this really well, and they can own the back end. We can also accomplish this moving more into the B2B space as we target banks, corporations, schools, and more, white labeling our software. Milestones, I'll read them all. Obviously, there's a ton on here, but I really just want to draw to your attention that, we incorporated fall of 2018. We launched to the App Store and Google Play as an MVP, as well as the web app, fall of 2019. Partnered with Blackhawk Cards last fall, and this fall joined the RevTech Accelerator Program, and we're currently pitching for seed investment. And so our ask is we're looking for a $500,000 investment for a 20% stake to help us continue the development of our technology, expand our team to enhance operations, and market the product in North America. And lastly, I'll leave you with this. It's not what you do for your children, but what you've taught them to do for themselves that will make them successful human beings. Hire and Fire Your Kids is a lifestyle change. It is not a fad. It's really a tool to help parents effectively communicate with their kids and empower their kids to contribute to their households in a meaningful way. So let's build them up today to be confident, independent, and happy adults of tomorrow. Thank you.
There you go. Jody, nice presentation. You're right, the name is very catchy. And so I think that grabs attention immediately, so that's great. So has anyone mentioned the company Tycoon to you? Tycoon was a very similar business backed by Doug Lebda, the Lending Tree CEO. It was started probably 2010. It was a similar, do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
It was a similar business, and they put a lot of money into it and ultimately failed. And so I think there's a lot that could be learned. I can't remember, I don't think you could necessarily get to Doug, but there were several other people in Charlotte involved. I know that. And we can put you in touch with them because I think there's probably a lot of lessons learned from Tycoon. So with that said, my experience, my kids at the time were, 12 and 14 years old, put them on Tycoon, they picked up some chores. It was a fun thing to do for about 2 months. And then they lost interest, the novelty wore off, and I lost my kids on Tycoon. So, I think the engagement factor, now gamification is a great thing. And the engagement is gonna be the differentiation for you. And so, eventually you're gonna have 100% churn because eventually the kids are gonna grow up and move on. But if you can keep them engaged for those formative years, that would be a great thing. I think what Tycoon struggled with was the engagement, so call it churn, like my kids churned after 2 months. And then, honestly, how to make money. That was challenging. You see a lot of apps in the App Store, they're free to download. You may see an ad pop up here and there. But the ad strategy is gonna be tough. But you had a couple of other revenue streams there. So those are the things that I would give you feedback on, and if you can touch base with someone that was part of the Tycoon group, just to understand, you can learn a lot from maybe their mistakes. As far as the things I look for in the pitch, I think you hit all of them. The only one I missed was barrier to entry. You said that you're the only app that does this, and this. But yeah, I'd just be interested in, some of the things that you developed that might form a moat for others to join. And then finally on the traction side, man, you have a lot of traction because I couldn't read anything on that slide. Eliminate some of that stuff. Just give me the high points. And if you have financial traction, make that big and bold. Would love to see that. And number of users, I think I saw somewhere, it might have been your original pitch for RevTech. I think you had like 1,200 users or something like that. That should be bold also.
Yeah, over 12,000 users. Yeah.
I'm sorry, 12,000, even better.
Yeah.
So 12,000.
Not all active though. I wish they were all active. They're not all active.
Yeah, well, that's the other measure is you're going to have 100% churn eventually, but are you keeping them active? Unlike my children who failed after 2 months, are you keeping them active for a much longer? That's going to be a key KPI for you is the length of time you can keep the children and parents engaged.
That's great. Thank you so much.
All right, a couple of things then, Jody. First of all, I really like the way you laid out, here's the problem and here's the solution we're offering, right? So that was great because it got me really focused on what you were doing right up front. I think that's important. You did mention the 12,000 users because I wrote it down.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So you did cover that, and I appreciate that because that was a very good sense of traction. And again, on your solution side, you laid that out very effectively, right? It's recognition, rewards, consequences, and so I like that. Where I started to get a little confused was, what was your target market? Obviously the parents, because you can't market directly to the kids very effectively, right? So you're trying to get to the parents, and I was unsure of, was this an app that the parents used, or was it something that required the kids to actually have a cell phone and be able to interact with the application itself, right? So that wasn't clear from the presentation.
Okay.
And I think that's very important, because if they do require that digital device, then it pushes them up in age group that you're targeting, right? I think from, you even said it, right? There are a ton of chore apps out there, right? And I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old grandkids, and they're very short. Their mother is very, very, we'll just call it disciplined, right? So she's got the chore chart that she hangs up and uses, and they focus and they do so they're doing all of that, but they're doing it like with a big sign in the kitchen, right? So I think one of the things I'd really have liked to have seen was, where do you define yourself as competing, right? It's Gartner does this on the technology side, right? Their Magic Quadrant, and then you pick the axes and say, this is where we fit relative to the competition. That's really helpful for an investor to get a good view of where you fit, and especially if it's a crowded space. And again, if this was an investor pitch, I'd have liked you to spend a little more time on how do you make money, because you did it a little bit, right? And there was a distribution fee for, which I didn't really 100% get, because you didn't have time to explain it. And then there was a membership fee, so I presume that you're charging the parents some kind of monthly number. And again, that's a hurdle, right? Because if you're actually forcing the parents to pay something, are they willing to do it? And, again, where does that fit? I did like it. I'll compliment you. You did spend enough time on the team, and you went back and forth on all the different team members and what they contributed. So that was well done. And Tycoon, I'll dredge up the name for you, because I know one of the people that was very actively involved in that, and I will get that to you today via LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jody.
All right, thanks, Jody. And we've got our last, but certainly not the least, presentation. Just a quick reminder to keep your microphones and cameras off. We're going to have an opportunity for networking after this presentation. So just sit tight and send any questions you have via chat, and we'll go ahead and get started with TrueLytics.
Thank you. Pleasure meeting everyone. Jody, I spent all morning firing my kids, so you're on to something. My name is Jeremy Carnell. I'm the CEO and co-founder of TrueLytics, and we are pioneering what we call an advisor transition management platform for the financial services sector. We're a lean and mean team headquartered out of Austin, Texas. I'm joined at the C-suite by seasoned startup entrepreneurs. Eli Gassert's my chief technology officer. Ian Carnell, my genetic equal identical twin, is my chief revenue officer, lifelong startup business partner. My co-founder in this venture, and everyone actually on the bottom of that list are my subject matter experts. My co-founder, Terry Mullen, former president and CEO of Lincoln Financial Distributors. Casey Logan comes from Hartford and Lincoln. Owen Dahl, a former Mass Adams principal, as well as the author of How to Value, Buy, and Sell Financial Advisory Practices. We, to date, have some great traction. Our initial go-to-market was going after independent broker-dealers, custodians, and asset managers. We have 50 of those enterprises currently as customers, the likes in the wealth advisory space of Cetera and LPL, in insurance like M Financial, and in tax of Antax. We have 15,580 users. As of this year, we started going after RIAs directly, and that's really been supercharging our growth. We're currently at 1.5 million in annual reoccurring revenue, 57% year-to-date annual growth with a gross profit of 73%. As far as some recognition, the latest one that we got was from Investopedia, who ranked us as the best practice management software for data and analytics in 2021. We're getting this traction because demands for transitions in financial services are high. By transitions, I mean the trends to go independent from these advisors and agents, from moving from one broker-dealer to another, the trend to go to RIA, or to even plan for succession and grow strategically through mergers and acquisitions. The problem is is that the process is broken. 84, the lifestyle nature of these businesses now have led to 84% of them not having continuity or succession plans in place because of the demographic pressures. Average age is nearing 60, 38% are going to retire in the next 10 years. And because of the economic incentives in place, 13% just transition annually. Because of the legacy nature of financial services, there's an overdependence on really expensive and time-consuming professional services and consultants to deal with this. M&A consultants, valuation consultants, business brokers, recruiters, and the like. So Trulytics is bringing digital transformation to this aspect of the market. We've built a end-to-end B2B SaaS platform that was purpose-built to match the life cycle of an independent advisor or agent. We have a recruiting module, we have a practice management module, planned and unplanned session module as well. And so new users that get onboarded into the platform are introduced to a transition dashboard where they can pick one of 6 transition business objectives, everything from practice optimization to exit or growing strategically. We ingest 150 data points for every book of business. We calculate that and produce thousands of peer benchmarks, 50 key performance indicators, 3 primary scorecards, a business client and revenue stability scorecard. This here is a great health and wellness check of that book of business before a transitional event. And the fact that we've evaluated 30,000 firms already in the United States really points to how we're beginning to Zillify this space. But we take it a step further than Zillow. Zillow will give you a Z estimate for your home value. We'll give you 4 different valuations for your book of business, but also those key performance indicators that we generate will show you where your unrealized value is and what screw to turn to capture that. And so when we looked at our data from 2018 to 2020, for the average independent advisory rep, we could show them $300,000 of unrealized value they could capture. For the heads of succession planning and practice management at the network level, so for example, at an independent broker dealer overseeing thousands of these, we were able to show them on average where $250 million of unrealized value exists across their network. We don't stop there though. We take that rich data and add them to profiles for algorithmic matchmaking. This is happening in a private sense at the enterprise level to give those heads of succession planning a fighting chance to direct plan succession within network and keep those assets under management. We also leverage our data for data enrichment, and we give the enterprises robust enterprise functionality to manage their networks at scale, to be able to white label our solution or seamlessly integrate it with their primary platform through single sign-on and APIs. We have 3 tiers of pricing. Enterprises on average pay $100,000. Those are 3-year contract terms. That's really focused on independent broker dealers, custodians, and asset managers. At the professional level, that's really focused at the mid-market for us. So those are RIAs and OSJs. That's $20,000 a year. Same 3-year contract terms. Unaffiliated advisors to our enterprises can self-serve for a $399 a month solution. Given that there's 900,000 of them, we see this as a huge market opportunity. One that we're really poised to capture because out of the entire competitive set, the bulk of them are professional services that go direct to advisor. We're the only B2B SaaS platform that both has a exchange of value at the enterprise level as well as at the advisor/agent level. Our ask is we're seeking $2 million to supercharge revenue operations in a post-seed pre-Series A raise. That will give us 24 months of runway. Our objective is to take 1.5 million in ARR and grow that to 6 million in ARR. That would require 100% year-over-year growth. And I'll take any questions you have.
All right. Very well done. I've very rarely seen somebody hit the time.
I'm so excited.
As soon as you ended it, went off. So perfect timing.
Thank you.
And you crammed in a whole bunch of information in there. And I want to start out by saying I appreciate your font size selection on some of the important ones. Right, we'll come back to that, but that helped me quite a bit to be able to focus.
Great.
So. I also really love the fact that you spent time up front talking about the team, and I thought it was just the right amount given the time frame that you had. So very, very well done on that. I like the, and if you look at this market, right, as you were saying, a lot of transition going on with the financial advisors, always has been. I would have I would have one of the numbers in there that really jumped at me, and I would have found a way to make that one a bigger font, is the fact that you've got 13% of these companies are transitioning every year. That's a pretty staggering statistic. So I would, it defines your market, right? Because that's how you get paid when people are actually doing that. So I think you should highlight that a little bit more. The other stat there, the 38% to retire in 10 years, again, pretty impressive when you get us old boomers, right, hitting that retirement age and looking at that transition process. I liked your the revenue, right? That 100K a year, 25K a year, and the $399 for the independent advisor. One of the things that was that I needed a little bit of an explanation for me is you're charging that fee every year, and the question was, what if this was more transactional in nature as opposed to something that goes out over time? I mean, that was I had trouble when you said 3-year contracts, and I was like, well, if they're looking to transition this, what's the value that they get by signing up for a 3-year deal if they're looking to transition now? So that was lost on me just a little bit.
I'll actually just address that real quick. So those licenses are for enterprises, both at the 100,000 level. Those are the big enterprises. Mid-market, those are the RIAs. At the $100,000 level, those are networks of thousands of independent advisory reps. So they push it down to that network. And so those networks are all in different stages of their life cycle. Some are in practice optimization, some are in M&A, some are looking for a successor. So it's just at scale, those enterprises need to accommodate all of those different types of use cases. So that's why they pay the annual license.
Yeah, and Jeremy, that was my point, right? This is more than transactional focused, and one of the real value props, I think, of the platform, hence the name, right, are the peer benchmarks and the analytics that you get. So I would hit that a little bit harder as well. That it's not 100% focused on the transition, but there's an ongoing value. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Rob, because he knows a lot more about this space than I did.
Thank you for your feedback.
That's true. So again, nice presentation, Jeremy.
Thank you.
You know, it's interesting. I usually see the traction slide at the end. And at first, you started throwing out, it's a really impressive traction.
Thank you.
1.5 million in ARR, 50 asset managers, 15,000 users, very impressive. No question, having that in the front of the presentation grabbed my attention, because my immediate conclusion was this is the real deal. You're onto something. Now, the flip side of that is that I'm still not exactly sure what your platform does. So maybe I don't know the industry as well. So go back to 2 presentations. Use a use case. What did you do for a particular wealth manager or firm, and walk us through that? I think that would help a little bit. Of course, the screenshots are great. A demo, if you had more time, would certainly help a lot. But again, the use case explaining a real world scenario that you use. I love your pricing. What is your average contract size? I mean, there's a big difference between enterprise and the individual user. But I suspect that your average size is in the tens of thousands, right?
It is. It's $37,000 is the average contract value, though the average lifetime value is something like $106,000 given our contract terms. So we have like a 3-to-1 LTV to CAC.
Those are great numbers. Make them big and bold. 37,000 annual contract value or average contract value. That's going to wake up some investors. Because you can add that up really quick and see how it turns into annual recurring revenue. And then I'm going to embarrass her here, but Priya is in the audience. She's in the wealth management space. You should speak to her. I'm sure she can have
happy to speak to her.
Some feedback there. So I just put her on the spot. That's all I had.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Truly. All right. Awesome. Well, we want to give a big thanks to all of the RevTech Labs companies for presenting today. So let's give them a big round of applause. We appreciate you guys joining us. We look forward to seeing the other half of the class of teen of RevTech Labs Accelerator next month. Before we go ahead and get into the networking room, so the way this is going to work is that each room is going to have a different founder in it. So if you are one of the founders that presented today, you're going to be